I'm Alice Loxton, and I present documentaries over on History Hit TV. If you're passionate about all things royal history, sign up to History Hit TV. It's like Netflix, but just for history. You've got hours of ad-free documentaries about all aspects of the past. You can get a huge discount for History Hit TV. Make sure you check out the details in the video description and use the code REALROYALTY, all one word, when you sign up. Now, on with the show.
2011. Britain is in the grip of a coalition government.
It's seen 250,000 march as one against the coalition's cuts.
The country has just lived through the worst recession in living memory.
I'm afraid to tell you there's no money left.
But not everyone is unhappy.
We're getting married in the morning.
Hundreds of thousands more will join this crowd. Many are already settling down for the night.
You've even got monarchist socks on.
And the pants to go with it.
Prince William and Kate Middleton are getting married.
I now announce that the Princess Catherine doll is now on sale. Thank you.
Royal collectibles are selling like hotcakes. Even stars and celebrities are joining in.
What would I buy them?
I would send them some congratulatory marijuana.
What would I buy him? A toaster, obviously.
I would send them a beautifully handcrafted, jewel-encrusted bong.
Kate's life is about to change forever.
The fairy tale wedding of a commoner marrying her prince, very much a reality.
When Kate Middleton married Prince William, she became the most famous royal wife on the planet and a future Queen of England. Her profile was so great that she transcended Britain's previous most popular royal wives. Her husband's mother, Princess Diana.
She was the people's princess, and that's how she will stay in our hearts and in our memories.
And her late great-grandmother-in-law, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mum.
We cheers for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Hip, hip!
At the turn of the 20th century, the future kings of England had little choice in their partners. Despite their status, they had less control over their future than most of their subjects. Future wives were often picked by royal parents from a pool of eligible princesses from across Europe. Each royal marriage was forged to strengthen alliances and allegiances, ensuring peace and trade across the continent. Queen Victoria was the master of this real Game of Thrones. Her 9 children were married off to the royal families of Germany, Denmark, and Russia. When Edward VII died in 1910, his funeral was attended by dozens of royal heads of state, most of whom were his relatives. But these family ties would be of little use when, 4 years later, war broke out across Europe. The marriage between the new king, George V, and the German-born Mary of Teck could not hold Europe together.
King George V visited Berlin with the present Queen Mary. Far more vividly than the colourless sentences of history books, these earlier pictures convey the untiring efforts of the English royal house to wed the nations of Europe into a peace-loving family.
The peace-loving family was torn apart, and royal marriage-making was never the same again. By the 1920s, Britain's royal men had graduated to choosing their own women. How times had changed. Class and previous relationships were now the biggest considerations. When the heir to the British throne, Edward, Prince of Wales, and his younger brother Albert, started to hang out with married women who were also Australian and American, the establishment and their royal family was in uproar. Edward lost his throne when he refused to give up his American divorcee. But Albert chose more wisely and became king. Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was to become the most popular royal wife of modern times, though no one knew it then. Elizabeth was the youngest daughter of the Earl of Strathmore, from a noble line of Scots that stretched back to the 14th century. She was raised with 9 siblings in their ancestral home of Glamis Castle, a huge medieval pile in the Scottish lowlands. Her upbringing was religious, with a focus on the responsibility that came with wealth. But that didn't stop her from regularly indulging in parties, cocktails, and wicked humour. At one party in 1910, a fortune teller is said to have given Elizabeth a prediction: you will live to be a queen and the mother of a queen. When the Great War maimed and injured thousands of soldiers, Glamis was turned into a nursing home, and a teenage Elizabeth became the life and soul of the carers. She also showed a cool head. When fire broke out in the castle, she was the only member of the family at home. She took control and set up a human chain that saved many of the family's priceless antiques. Elizabeth started dating her royal husband-to-be when she moved south to London and attended one of the great high society balls of the age. She was just 19, and it wasn't love at first sight.
Kate Middleton.
Britain's latest royal wife first met her husband-to-be when they both signed up for the University of St Andrews. Unlike Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, Kate had not come from a line of aristocrats. She doesn't have a drop of royal blood in her. Her ancestors include coal miners and labourers, and her second cousin twice removed is a current burlesque dancer and former Playboy model. However, her parents, former airline cabin crew, became multimillionaires after starting a successful party business. They live in a Georgian mansion in the quaint village of Bucklebury in Berkshire. Kate, whose younger sister Pippa was later to cause a huge stir at the royal wedding, attended one of the best schools in Britain, Marlborough College. Popular, intelligent, and good at sports, Kate holds the school's high jump record to this day.
We played hockey together and tennis. She was an incredible swimmer, but she was also quite famous for being a cricketer as well, and a bit of a touch rugby player. She was pretty good.
Kate was also pretty good at acting. In school, she played a woman who receives a prediction that echoed that given to Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon 80 years earlier.
We shall meet a handsome man, a rich gentleman. It is all I ever hoped for. Will you fall in love with me? Indeed he will. And marry me? And marry you. He'll fall in love with me. He'll marry me.
This YouTube video becomes even more amazing when you hear the name of the man Kate falls in love with.
Yes, oh yes, dear William.
The fictional prediction started to come true at a university charity fashion show when William paid £200 to see Kate walk down the catwalk in this outfit.
There was one in particular, sort of semi-transparent, very nice, very flattering dress. You couldn't help but notice her. That was perhaps the time when he really saw her as something a little bit special.
Prince William was smitten. Soon, William and Kate had started a love affair, and in their second year, like millions of other students, they shared a flat with two friends in a terraced house in a St Andrews street renowned for its parties.
The parties might have been fun, but Kate would soon find that, as with any royal romance, the course of true love rarely runs smooth. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon also had an unusual start to her relationship with her future king. At first, she and Prince Albert were more tennis partners than lovers. Elizabeth, who valued her freedom, saw the life of a royal wife as far too restrictive and twice turned down Albert's marriage proposals. His brother Edward met with Elizabeth to try and persuade her to marry Albert. And at least one newspaper of the day got the wrong end of the stick, reporting that Elizabeth was to wed the Prince of Wales. When it was finally announced that Elizabeth was to marry the Duke of York, she agreed to talk to the press, giving a candid interview in which she revealed the true story of their courtship. Multiple proposals, no engagement ring, and worst of all, Albert's private nickname was Bertie. Her new in-laws-to-be responded quickly by banning her from speaking directly to the press again, a royal edict she was to follow for the rest of her life. In the 1920s, there was no such thing as a press pack or 24/7 news. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was left alone. Unlike Kate Middleton in 2007, more of a hunted animal than a potential fiancé of a future king. Britain's paparazzi were now hounding Kate around the clock.
Even a fairly average photo of her made the cover of this magazine. And she's not just there through being Prince William's girlfriend, she's there as a fashion icon, as gossip column fodder, even as a role model. It means people are interested in her, and it means people can make money off her.
While at official engagements, Kate was to some extent protected from press intrusion. There was suddenly interest in every aspect of her life.
Her treatment drew parallels with the way William's mother, Lady Diana, was treated when she became engaged to Prince Charles.
How well are you coping with all the press attention? Well, as you can see, you can tell. Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you. Well, it is, naturally.
Prince William would tell her about the life his mother had, the trauma she had, the stress she had. The one thing that you could say about Kate, that she would think things through for herself.
We don't know a lot about Kate. She's kept herself quite protected. She's given no interviews, she said nothing, and it's been a model of discretion.
But even the model of discretion couldn't second-guess the tactics of the press. When she wouldn't talk, they read her lips.
It was at Sandhurst at William's passing out parade that Kate made her first official appearance as Prince William's girlfriend. While William pounded the parade ground in front of his grandmother, our lip reader revealed her innermost thoughts to be, "I love him in uniform, he's so sexy." Not a remark you'd often hear in royal circles.
The constant attention of the cameras eventually took its toll, and Kate tried to put a stop to it by complaining officially to Britain's Press Complaints Commission.
The photograph in today's Daily Mirror shows Kate Middleton just walking down the street carrying a cup of coffee. But alongside, they say she looks stony-faced. Perhaps they say it's because she's fed up with Prince William. Today's complaint to the Press Complaints Commission suggests if she's fed up with anyone, it's with photographers.
She's got to expect some photos to be taken. If she's out in public, she's got to expect us to be there.
Royal weddings are now multi-million-pound events, no matter who the bride is or how rich or poor her family really are. For these lavish occasions, the father of the bride cannot possibly afford to pick up the tab.
For the newly betrothed couple, the guesstimates are coming thick and fast. The actual cost, between 20 and 40 million, with a potential security bill in the tens of millions. They do say organising a wedding can be the most stressful time of your life.
In 1923, when Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon and Prince Albert got married, there was far less stress. And they didn't have to pay for the wedding cake. A famous cake and biscuit maker came up with one of the biggest ever made, a 300-pound, 10-foot-tall cake with icing miniatures of Glamis and Windsor Castle. They charged 6pence a time to see it, and thousands stood in line for hours. For the actual wedding, seats were sold at between £250 and £5,000 at today's prices. The streets of London were filled with people eager to catch a glimpse of the beautiful bride, who chose an unusual medieval-style wedding dress. Her groom wore the uniform of a Royal Air Force Group captain, complete with a chest full of medals. When it came to Kate Middleton's wedding, her in-laws-to-be, in the new age of austerity, made sure costs were kept within reason.
Reining in some of the grandeur of when Prince Charles married Diana. At that time, 3 million people were unemployed, but the event reportedly cost as much as £30 million, and they invited 3,500 guests. By comparison, Princess Elizabeth in 1947 saved up ration cards to purchase the fabric needed for her dress. There were 2,000 invited guests.
Kate and William's wedding was mostly funded by the Queen and Prince Charles, with the UK taxpayer picking up the security bill.
Security for the royal wedding will involve thousands of extra police officers, many of them lining the route between Buckingham Palace and Westminster Abbey. Problem is, paying those officers for the day will actually cost the Met millions of extra pounds worth of overtime.
Kate and William also had a giant cake, 8 tiers of it. Not a freebie this time, but one paid for personally by her mum and dad. They also bought her wedding dress.
It was in this that the woman who never looks bad had never looked better.
Her dress had come from the fashion house of the late, great Alexander McQueen, designed by his successor, Sarah Burton. Demure long lace sleeves, a corset satin top which flared from the waist, her lace veil sheer enough to show her every expression.
Expressions are an important part of being a successful royal wife. In the 1920s, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was so radiant, she became known as the Smiling Duchess. When she unexpectedly found herself queen, alongside her husband, King George VI, she continued to smile and won even more hearts.
Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, receives the crown of glory, honor, and joy. May God enrich your royal heart with his abundant grace. and with everlasting gladness in the life that is to come.
The new Queen's crown of glory was specially made for her, platinum, with 2,800 diamonds. As the threat of war with Germany depressed Europe, Britain's King and Queen made a state visit to France. It was expected to be a sombre, in-black affair, because Elizabeth's mother had died 3 weeks earlier. Elizabeth got her favourite fashion designer, Norman Hartnell, to create an entire white wardrobe. It caused a sensation and won her a legion of fans.
The quiet dignity of the king, the gracious, unfailing charm of the queen have won the respect and affection of the whole French people.
One diplomat said, "We have taken your queen to our hearts. From now on, she rules over 2 nations." 50 years later, Princess Diana assumed Elizabeth's role as the royal fashion icon. Whatever she wore became a must-have, and that included the styles and customs she adopted when on royal visits. Elizabeth's influence was still being felt in 2015, when the president of China, Xi Jinping, made his first state visit to Britain. Kate wore a diamond-studded tiara passed down from Elizabeth's collection. Her sparkling designer gown matched the Chinese flag.
How charming the Queen looks. She is wearing a crinoline gown of silver and gold, with white furs and a glittering tiara.
In the late 30s, Elizabeth's wardrobe cheered a nation being dragged into war, one that would put her husband in the front line.
Without freedom, there can be no enduring peace, and without peace, no enduring freedom.
And she, firmly by his side. The King's speech made it difficult for him to communicate, but he made up for it by personally supporting the armed forces, while Elizabeth became the royal face on the home front. When Hitler's bombs destroyed the East End of London during the night, she was there the next day, dressed in pastel shades to show compassion and hope. Britain's wartime leaders noticed that when Elizabeth visited munitions factories, productivity shot up. She also became the champion of the women who now manned the factories.
In 100 ways, you have filled the places of the men who've gone away to fight. Your work, whatever it may be, is just as valuable, just as much war work, as that which is done by the bravest soldier, sailor or airman who actually meets the enemy in battle.
The enemy had already noticed the woman who had never been taught how to be a queen. Adolf Hitler dubbed her the most dangerous woman in Europe.
And the Guard of Honor of the Royal Navy, the Army, and the Royal Air Force dip their colors in reverent homage to a king leaving his capital forever.
After the death of her husband in 1952, Elizabeth became the Queen Mother as her daughter took the throne. She quickly became the nation's favorite granny as the new Queen's children were born and raised. And she made sure that the entire family followed her devotion to royal duty and service to the country. Later in life, the Queen Mum became a media personality in her own right. The satirical puppet show Spitting Image characterized her as a gin-drinking royal matriarch who just loved to have a good time.
Bingo! Is it my birthday again?
In the year 2000, it was, as she celebrated her 100th birthday, the first British royal to do so. It wasn't only her family who turned out to wish her well. 40,000 members of the British public were there too. Apart from being Britain's favourite royal for most of the 50 years she was the Queen Mum, Elizabeth was a guiding light for her daughter, the Queen. According to royal insiders, they spoke every single day of their lives. When the Queen Mother died at the age of 101, everyone mourned the loss of a national treasure. When the Queen Mother first became a royal wife, women were still campaigning for equal voting rights. During her lifetime, in bad times and good, she saw massive change. As a royal, Elizabeth was never able to exert political influence. However, she became patron of more than 350 charities, many of them connected to disability or social injustice. Even when homosexuality was illegal, she surrounded herself with gay staff and friends. When a Conservative government minister admonished her for recruiting gay people, the Queen Mother replied, "Without them, we'd have to go self-service." It was her daughter Elizabeth who signed into British law the Equal Marriage Act of 2013. The royal wives who followed her broke many of the royal traditions and protocols she had held dear. Diana caught the mood of 1980s feminism when she refused to vow to obey when she married Prince Charles. And her subsequent public feud with the family and divorce from the heir to the throne was not what royal wives were supposed to do. Kate Middleton has also changed the way the House of Windsor is perceived by being commonly known as Kate, rather than the Duchess of Cambridge or Princess Kate.
She is very much one of us, the genuine people's princess.
There's everything to like and nothing to dislike. How great is that?
Kate has caused a stir by using her royal status to bring mental health issues amongst children into the forefront of her charitable work.
I often get asked why I decided to spend time highlighting the mental health of children. Since beginning my work in areas like addiction, for example, I have seen time and time again that the roots of poor mental health in adulthood are almost always present in unresolved childhood challenges.
This was the Duchess doing what she does best, making herself at home among the children at the Harlem-based mental health centre, immediately making one new friend, who then introduced her to all his friends. The staff were more than impressed.
It was awesome. She got on her knees to play with them, which was great. I mean, she's pregnant and she got on her knees to play with my children.
If it all looked a little familiar, there's a good reason. 25 years ago, Princess Diana visited Harlem. The similarities are striking and not lost on the American media.
Following in the footsteps of royal wives before her, Kate has put her huge popularity to good use, bringing light to taboo subjects around the world.
They are fascinated with William and Kate, and in particular the Duchess, whose every public move is accompanied by the clicking of countless cameras. In that spotlight, it was again towards the children that she was drawn. If she feels comfortable with them, it's clearly reciprocated. Look at the face of the little boy shaking her hand, who can now tell his friends he's met the future Queen of England.
May 2015. The world is in chaos.
France is now on its highest level of alert against another terrorist attack.
The so-called Islamic State is waging war. In Britain, the Prime Minister is fighting to stay in power.
Don't you ever dare lecture us about how to help the many in our country!
And a royal event is capturing the headlines.
We welcome, with humble duty, the second born of the Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge.
Prince William and Kate Middleton are celebrating the birth of their second child, Princess Charlotte.
Oh, it's fantastic. Little baby girl, well done. Little princess, good on her.
It's a girl! It's a girl! Yes, lovely! Yeah!
Her brother George, just 2 years old, will one day, like his father, be king. But Charlotte is almost certain never to be queen. One of a growing number of the royal family who are destined to serve, but never inherit. They are the spare heirs.
So the new princess will be fourth in line to the throne, and she doesn't know it yet, of course. But this little one already occupies a unique place in British constitutional history. She is the first female royal heir who cannot be superseded by a male heir born after her.
Charlotte is unique in more ways than one. Her great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, is Britain's longest and oldest serving monarch. Her grandfather, Prince Charles, will one day become king. Her father will also become king, as will her brother George. But she, unless something tragic happens to all of them, will always be a princess. Her official position puts her fourth in line to the throne. But that doesn't mean Charlotte will be able to live a normal life, free from the burdens of royal duties and cameras. The House of Windsor doesn't work like that. Charlotte like all spare heirs within what the royal family call the firm, will be groomed from the moment she toddles to step into the breach, should the unthinkable happen. And there is precedence for this, close to home. When Elizabeth was born, she was never expected to become queen. Not only was she female, at a time when male heirs were given priority over their elder sisters, but also her father wasn't a direct heir. His brother Edward was. Spare heir Elizabeth's destiny was changed only because her uncle chose love over duty. And Queen Elizabeth isn't the only one. Kings such as William II through to Henry VIII were also spares. Perhaps the most famous and tragic spare heirs are known as the Princes in the Tower, Edward V of England and Richard of Shrewsbury, the Duke of York. When their father, Edward IV, died, his brother Richard took his young sons, aged 12 and 9, to the Tower of London for safekeeping. They were never seen again, and their uncle became Richard III. Prince Charles's namesake and ancestor, Charles I, was also a spare heir, who inherited when his older brother died of typhoid. But he made a hash of it, starting a civil war with his own parliament and having his head chopped off in 1649. Modern spare heirs don't get beheaded, but their every move is now scrutinised and followed by the media, as Elizabeth's younger sister, Princess Margaret, discovered.
I think that Princess Margaret did find it at times quite frustrating, because I remember her saying once, nobody ever asked her opinion about anything. She was just told when to turn up and told what to do.
Princess Margaret was 10th in line to the throne when she was first told to wave to the British people. She and her sister both expected to remain spare heirs, enjoying a childhood under the radar. How wrong they were.
Nobody thought she would ever be heiress to the throne. Her parents were the Duke and Duchess of York. Then suddenly her father became king. The royal family at the coronation, and the 11-year-old princess was next in line to become queen.
During World War II, Elizabeth, as a potential future queen, was in the forefront of the war effort, while Margaret was filmed as a fun-loving civilian, leading to a view within royal circles that she was a spoilt child. But the public liked her, and she became popular. When she mingled with the crowds outside Buckingham Palace as the war in Europe ended, instead of appearing on the famous balcony with the rest of the royals, that popularity grew. As her sister gave birth to children, Margaret was pushed further down the pecking order. But when Elizabeth became queen, Margaret found herself the centre of attention. Despite her royal upbringing, she was unprepared for the social world that was to follow. As the post-war years became the 50s and then the swinging 60s, Margaret found herself at the heart of high society and a fashion icon.
Princess Margaret retains her place as an outstanding leader of fashion with a charm so much her own.
That charm made her the most photographed woman of her day. But her love life remained largely private. Britain's press was nowhere near as tabloid as today. The wheels came off her bandwagon when news leaked out that she was in a close relationship with her father's former equerry, Captain Peter Townsend. Equerries are officers of the royal household who were supposed to assist members of the family, not date them. Peter Townsend was 16 years Margaret's senior, with 2 children from a previous marriage. The romance became as controversial as the one that had caused her uncle, Edward VIII, to abdicate. Matters went from bad to worse when Townsend divorced his wife and asked the princess to marry him.
Upon Princess Margaret centres worldwide interest, and sharing the spotlight is Group Captain Peter Townsend. The Group Captain accompanied the late King and his family on their South African tour. He and the then very young princess were forming a friendship. 2 years ago, he left the royal household and was posted to Brussels. Rumour that they had been long in love seemed confirmed. At this stage, it was still asked, will they become engaged? Millions all over the world impatiently wonder. A female in the milk business was the only one not curious.
Margaret accepted and informed her sister, whose consent was required.
It was now understood that there could not be any news until the Prime Minister had had audience with Her Majesty after her return to London.
Queen Elizabeth was in a bind. As monarch, she could not say yes without the support of her government and the Church of England, and they were both saying no. Even though the general public supported Margaret, behind the scenes, she was facing bitter opposition. her royal family feared a repeat of the Edward VIII controversy. On October the 31st, 1955, Margaret issued a statement saying she had decided not to marry Peter Townsend.
Now she has put her royal duty first. The hearts of all in Britain and the Commonwealth are with the young princess who has chosen not self, but country.
But Margaret showed no sign of not enjoying herself as she rejoined the nightlife of London. Her close circle of friends became known as the Margaret set, and her life became a succession of fast cars, clubs, and all-night parties. She also found a new beau, Billy Wallace, the son of a government minister. But their planned marriage was cut short when he was caught having an affair whilst on a visit to the Bahamas. Margaret eventually fell for one of Britain's top photographers, Anthony Armstrong-Jones. He had taken the official portraits for the Queen and Prince Philip's Royal Tour of Canada in 1957. When they married in Westminster Abbey, it became the first royal wedding to be broadcast on television. 300 million watched worldwide. Because he was a commoner, and in those days it was unthinkable that they might have children without a royal title, Armstrong-Jones was made the first Earl of Snowdon, and Margaret became the Countess of Snowdon. Even though the wedding captured the imagination of television viewers, it did not meet with everyone's approval. Anthony was, after all, a photographer without royal blood. It was Anthony's day job as a photographer that first brought tensions to the marriage. He spent long periods abroad for his work, often with attractive models. Margaret expanded her social set to include showbiz celebrities. She spent time with Rolling Stone Mick Jagger and comic actor Peter Sellers, who was smitten by the princess he called Mam Darling. By 1973, the Snowdons were separated in all but name. But Margaret really caused an upset when she began a relationship with this man, Sir Roddy Llewellyn. A baronet and TV gardening expert, he was 17 years younger, the son of a former Olympic equestrian gold medalist and a member of the British aristocracy. The papers dubbed him Margaret's toy boy. As the princess enjoyed the high life, Britain's politicians criticised her, saying she wasn't worth the £55,000 she received from the public purse every year. Although she remained on good terms with Armstrong-Jones, in 1976, they formally separated. Margaret became the first senior member of the royal family to divorce since Henry VIII, who ended his marriage to Catherine of Aragon to marry Anne Boleyn. Margaret never remarried. In her later years, her health declined. She had always been a chain smoker and drank heavily. She died in 2002 at the age of 71.
The princess died here at 6:30 this morning after suffering a stroke. Confirmation of Princess Margaret's death came in a printed statement posted outside Buckingham Palace.
And we've just read the notice just now.
You know, nothing went quite right for her, did it? And never portrayed very well with the press, I don't think. You're always a bit cruel to her, I think.
Margaret isn't the only spare heir the press has been cruel to.
That's what he's been up to.
Is that really him?
That's really him.
Ever since he could walk, Prince Harry, the youngest son of Princess Diana and Prince Charles, has kept Britain's tabloids busy. As the brother of a future king, he is the ultimate spare heir. Growing up in the harsh glare of his parents' acrimonious split and divorce, and the tragic death of his mother in Paris.
There was a hug for one well-wisher. Otherwise, it was hard to believe Princes Harry and William are just 12 and 15.
Harry won the nation's heart at his mother's funeral as the loneliest boy in Britain. But it wasn't long before he began to show a rebellious streak. He was caught smoking cannabis and drinking underage when he was 17.
It was in this pub that the 17-year-old is said to have been drinking and smoking cannabis.
They're serious allegations, and one of the newspapers has actually said that they're prepared to offer us what they describe as a dossier. Well, I'd like to see what's in that, because if there is evidence on which we can act, we'll do so.
Prince Harry wasn't punished by his father. Instead, Charles discussed Harry's problem with him and his brother William before sending him to this rehabilitation clinic in Peckham, South London, where he heard from recovering heroin addicts about the effects of drug taking.
But the young Harry continued to create headlines. He got into brawls with the paparazzi outside London nightclubs.
His wild days as a drinker and smoker of exotic substances might be behind him. But then just a week ago, allegations that he cheated to pass an art exam, strenuously denied by Clarence House, and now last night's fisticuffs.
We know that Prince Harry is a bit of a wild card. He seems to enjoy the nightlife, and no one's having a go at him for that. I mean, he seems to like a night out drinking and dancing with pretty girls. Well, thank goodness he does. But the reality here is that it's gone beyond that.
The reality went even further when Harry was photographed wearing a Nazi uniform at a fancy dress party. Brother William was there too, and the overall theme was colonials and natives.
All the focus has been on Jewish hurt and the old veterans who fought the Second World War. And of course, that is deeply important because it's the month of Auschwitz. But actually, I'm deeply offended too by the very theme of the party that both William and Harry went to get their costumes for. What kind of a theme is colonials and natives in the 21st century? These, what kind of message are they giving about themselves? These aristocrats, these aristobrats, actually.
That's the culture of the British ruling class. It is a colonial culture. For us as Africans, that's our experience of the British monarchy.
I think the difficulty is just that one thing, that you never quite know if you're going to be called upon, as it were, to become king, or instead have what you, if you're being really cynical, could say a relatively pointless life.
Harry next caused an internet sensation when he played strip poker in Las Vegas, leaving little to the imagination. But in the UK, newspapers were constrained by privacy laws.
But like the rest of the British media, we can't show you them, because to do that would be a breach of his privacy, even though they're plastered all over the internet, and you've probably seen them already.
It's almost like we're going back to the days of Edward and Mrs. Simpson, when the whole of the world knew about their affair, but it wasn't reported in the UK.
Despite all this, Harry remained one of the most popular royals. 2 helicopter combat tours in Afghanistan helped. They made him a hero.
Second Lieutenant Wales is back in England, a country which he said he didn't like very much in a recent TV interview. Such a sentiment coming from a member of the royal family would normally generate deeply unflattering headlines, but not now, not in the week of Harry's tabloid reincarnation as the hero soldier prince.
And the question now for Prince Harry is whether he can show the same discipline in the rest of his life now he's back home as he did during the time that he was in the front line, on the front line in Afghanistan. If he falls out of a nightclub drunk in 2 weeks' time, a lot of the good that's been done over the last few days will be undone again very quickly.
The good wasn't undone. Harry's next step was to champion an Olympic-style competition for disabled and wounded servicemen and women. It won him the hearts of the nation.
400 wounded service personnel from 13 countries are competing in the Games, and Harry believes their determination is a lesson to us all.
Prosthetics, dogs, wheelchairs, high-performance cars, 4x4s, tattoos. We've got everything here. It can only be the Invictus Games. No blowing from the left, thank you.
The birth of his nephew, Prince George, pushed Harry further down the royal order, but it hasn't bothered him.
It's fantastic to have another addition to the family. I only hope my brother knows how expensive my babysitting charges are.
Harry seems content in his new role as Britain's favourite spare heir.
He has his faults, but by God, he's got his good points. And when I go on tour with Harry, it's a joy because every day he puts 110% into it. He might be the spare to the heir, but he's made himself very relevant.
The same cannot be said for Harry's uncle, Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, once second in line to his elder brother Charles when their mother became Queen Elizabeth. A succession of royal births pushed him down the inheritance list, and his reputation has suffered, despite being, like Prince Harry, a real war hero. In the 80s, he flew helicopters in the Falklands War and was in the thick of the action.
His Royal Highness, Prince Andrew. A lieutenant who calls himself simply the driver was punctual for his briefing. And for the first time, we were allowed to film what is to him simply routine search and surveillance.
By the end of the 90s, his love of flying had earned him another nickname, Air Miles Andy. even though he was an official UK trade and investment ambassador.
The life of a working royal. Prince Andrew's civil list salary is £250,000. None of the prince's trips broke the rules agreed between the Treasury, the Department of Transport and the royal household. Security, journey length, effective use of royal time and, yes, value for money are considered, but a tight schedule, the household argues, is reason enough for flying. Yet other royals are more circumspect. While the Duke of York never took a train or even a scheduled flight for journeys under £2,500, the Princess Royal did so nearly half the time, Prince Edward and his wife a quarter of the time.
If it's good enough for us, why isn't it good enough for members of our royal family? Certain individuals in the royal family may need to be reminded on occasions that we are spending public money.
It's not only air miles that have got the Duke into trouble. His love life has been littered with controversy too. First, there was Koo Stark, an actress from New York. Then came Sarah Ferguson, better known as Fergie. He married her and they had 2 children, the Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. Fergie became a figure of fun, ridiculed for her weight issues and labelled the Duchess of Pork by a satirical TV show, Spitting Image.
Media once dubbed me Great Fun Fergie. She was the breath of fresh air. And then it was just round, and then it was Fat Fergie, which gave way to Fat and Appalling Fergie, and ultimately my favourite and the best one of all, whoever thought it up, Fergie the Duchess of Pork. Yes.
Come on, Porky Sword, we're supposed to be entertaining. Can't you forget about money?
Oh, sorry. You're right, I can stand up here and I can laugh. But boy, did it hurt.
Prince Andrew was also hurt by the tabloid headlines alleging his wife's extramarital indiscretions. The main man was John Bryan, a Texan multimillionaire.
John Bryan, the Texas businessman in the pictures with the Duchess of York, was saying nothing in public this morning.
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
But in separate legal moves, he took out 2 court injunctions in an attempt to suppress their publication.
Andrew and Fergie divorced in 1996. But his world came crashing down again when Fergie was caught by a journalist from the News of the World trying to sell access to him. She was asking for £500,000.
What's a hard-up duchess to do when a businessman you hardly know offers cash in return for meeting your ex? Her former husband, Prince Andrew, is the UK's special representative for trade and investment. As such, he has access to some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world. That seems to be why his former wife thought she could sell access to him. Sarah Ferguson told the undercover reporter she only gets £15,000 a year from her divorce settlement. So the guardians of the firm that's based here must now decide whether to push her further from the spheres of royal patronage or whether that runs the risk of her doing something even more embarrassing in future.
Prince Andrew continued to draw criticism for his globetrotting, and he was seen in the company of numerous controversial figures. Colonel Gaddafi in Libya, and Jeffrey Epstein in New York, a convicted sex offender.
Prince Andrew was later forced to stand down as the UK's special trade emissary after it was revealed he'd visited Epstein on his release. Now the Duke is named in court documents filed this week by a woman claiming she was repeatedly forced to have sexual relations with him.
The uncharacteristically forceful statements from officials here are being driven by Prince Andrew himself.
He'll be kicking anything that comes in sight because he knows he's innocent. And because he knows he's innocent, he's not going to be pushed around and he's not going to be lying low.
And officials are letting it be known that palace lawyers are watching how the story is being reported.
Because Prince Andrew's only referred to in passing in the American proceedings, there's nothing he can do over there. So he has to wait for someone to say something over here that could justify a legal action. And unless they do, he has no way to clear his name.
Britain's royal spare heirs have always had more than their fair share of controversy. And no doubt in the years to come, more skeletons will emerge to further embarrass those who sit on the House of Windsor throne.
It's incredibly difficult for the younger sibling to a future monarch because they are in the public eye, but they don't have the protection perhaps, and they don't have the advice, and they don't have the role of king or queen.